Welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and today on the show we have Ian Conway. Ian was born in Washington, D.C., and he came to the area in the 80s. He is a chimney sweep, and he has been 30 years of being a chimney sweep in his company, the Chimney Doctor, which serves Southern Vermont and the New Hampshire River Valley. He is a Quaker, he's a bicyclist, and he and his wife, Claudia McCarthy, live at our residence of Earthbridge Community Land Trust. So here we are today with Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Wendy.
Thanks for coming on the show. So you came here in the 80s, but you grew up or outside of Washington, D.C.
Yeah, Rockville, Maryland, suburban D.C.
Yep. I know when we talked earlier, you've always liked heights. You've always liked somewhat claustrophobic spaces.
Both,
Yep.
yes.
Yep. And as a kid, did you look out for those kinds of places?
I was often found, high up a spruce tree or something and urged by my mother to get down, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There was one, I think, junior high school teacher that made a deal with me that if I would behave, I could get in this little book closet, and I agreed that I would do what she told me to. I would read my assignments if I could stay in this little space. So there's the claustrophobic space.
Interesting. That's sort of like Harry Potter, right? You get in a closet, and that's where you live.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you went to Evergreen College, studied horticulture, I believe?
Well, I actually went 2 years at Evergreen, and then I came back to University of Maryland because I realized that I wasn't good at hard sciences, and that's what I'd been studying for 2 years to rebel against my father, who was an English teacher. So I put it together and came out with a degree in ornamental horticulture. Because I had to put together some kind of degree.
Right, right. And this is back in the 70s or 80s.
Yeah.
And how'd you get to Putney?
Well, I ended up working for a summer for an old friend of mine who I went to high school with, Sandy Spring Friends School, actually a Quaker school. My parents were not Quakers, but they sent me to a Quaker school so that I would not end up leading a life of crime. It was a very, very wise move on their part. But I ended up working a summer for him. He was managing the organic garden part of Putney School. And he ended up wanting to move on at the end of the summer, and he said, "Are you interested in the job?" And I said, "No, no way. I do not want to do this. No, no, 1,000 times no." "Well, won't you consider it? Won't you just finish up the season?" And they basically coerced me into working for them. I worked for a wonderful Englishman, Roger Parrott.
Oh, yes. I remember Roger.
And became a fast friend of mine.
Yeah.
And it really worked very well for about 3 years. But at that time, the school wasn't really supporting the farm academically, so I became a glorified farmhand. And it just wasn't going in a direction that I wanted to. Now, to preface that, the school has done wonders with the farm. It's really worked out well over the past 3 decades. So it is now where I wish it had been when I was working there. But
yes, well, yeah, things evolve, right? And it did become much more part of their curriculum, I think, over time.
Well, it was originally,
too. That's right. That's right, the founding. And so you did that for a while, and then what happened?
It was about 3 seasons, so 3 growing seasons. And literally one night I was living next to Steve Anderson, and I picked up the phone and said, "What are you doing with the Chimney Doctor business?"
Steve Anderson, was he teaching at Putney School?
He was teaching at Wyndham College.
Okay, great.
Wyndham College folded very quickly. And he read a Mother Earth, a now famous Mother Earth news article, "Be a chimney sweep, make your fame and fortune in a rural economy," and ended up doing that for almost a decade. But I knew that he had taken over Hickory Ridge House right around the corner from where he lived. And I put 2 and 2 together and realized he couldn't do both. And for some reason, just called him. I could not tell you why. I just called him one night.
Did you apprentice with him?
Very much so. And apprenticing with somebody who's, been a college level teacher was wonderful.
Right. And actually, Chimney Doctor, the name, is a kind of a play on that, isn't it?
Steve was a Harvard PhD.
Right, right. So he was a doctor.
Yeah. And is still living in that same small house that he was living in with his wife. I believe she's 88 or 89, and I see him from time to time.
So you took over that business, so we're into the 90s now, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and you've been doing it.
88, I think.
Yeah, you've been doing it for 31 years. And I'm sure that you have a lot of different stories and anecdotes. And
Some I can tell, some I can't.
Exactly. That's a good thing about anecdotes. And so I guess one question I have for you is, I know that, I did not know this before, but there's a guild. The Chimney Sweeps have a guild. There are international guilds and national guilds.
This is a national guild, National Chimney Sweep Guild. There are various regional chimney sweep associations. We have a 2-state regional one that has a very long acronym, but it's basically the New England Association that involves New Hampshire and Vermont. The 2 guilds merged. You know, we have a little summer get-together and workshops and things.
Can you talk a little bit about what that's like, about the community of chimney sweeps, what you do when you get together, how you support each other?
For instance, my son Luke was working with me and got certified and would go to conventions, and he got to know all these old friends of mine. So Luke is hanging out at these conventions with chimney sweeps that are primarily over 60, you know, so he got to know all my old friends, and they look forward to seeing him each year at the convention, which was really fun. So you have that intergenerational thing going on.
Yes.
That was great fun.
Yeah. And I was reading, I went out on one of the sites, the Chimney Sweep sites, and there's a real code of ethics. There are real standards that you abide by.
Absolutely. And chimney sweeps, many are very, very technical. We have chimney sweeps sitting on the National Fire Protection Association code boards and things like that. So some of these guys and gals, but primarily men, have taken it to the nth degree. Now, in point of fact, the National Chimney Sweep Guild was actually founded by a woman, Eva Horton.
Interesting.
She was one of the first importers of European wood stoves and saw a need for this. She was not actually a chimney sweep. She was just a visionary that saw a need and sort of transposed the European model to the United States.
I think that's something that we don't really think about. We don't think about chimney sweeps very much unless we need somebody to come and clean our chimney. So the idea of there's a big network and camaraderie and support is really interesting.
And it's sort of a best kept secret because, you know, there's only one venue in the state of Vermont big enough for our convention. I think it's the Sheraton up in Burlington. We get together and we don't have any real need to advertise what we're doing because we're so busy, you know, networking. I don't see other chimney sweeps day to day, so when chimney sweeps get together, I mean, they're just, you know, a mile a minute.
Yeah. What do you talk about?
Chimneys. Chimneys, chimney sweeping, running a business, and your families and what you're doing, you know, from year to year. You know, one of my good friends on the Cape is just retired, and I was at a different function last summer, and you know, I knew that he was going to be having a bypass operation, and we were calling back and forth, and how are you doing? So there's that sort of personal looking out for each other, camaraderie. You
did talk to me a little bit about, it's almost like a Hippocratic oath that you take.
Absolutely.
Being a chimney sweep. Can you talk about that and going into someone's home?
Well, there are certainly the technical things that you're looking for as far as whether things are conforming to codes and things like that. But the non-technical aspect is that you're coming to somebody's house, you know, and you want to respect their house. You want to respect whatever their lifestyle is and you know, whatever it is that they consider important. I'm not a big pet person. Dogs and cats, I could really care less about them. But they're, you know, pet owners that just, that's so important for them. You want to respect that. You know, we bring dog biscuits in our trucks and things like that.
Nice.
You want to meet people where they are and respect their house.
Yeah. You get to know a lot of people, certainly in the area, because so many people call you back for annual cleanings, or regularly at least.
Oh, year after year after year. And you get to really be friendly with people over the years. One of my funner clients over the years was Tasha Tudor up in Marlboro, was a dedicated fireplace user. I mean, and she had an old cook stove that I think she had gotten when she was 16, and the thing was ancient, and you're always kind of tinkering it back together. I remember her serving me, I think, goat's milk ice cream or something.
You're right.
It was just lovely.
Yeah.
Really lovely.
Yeah. And did you get to know her?
Sure. Year after year. I probably went there for 15 or 20 years.
Yeah. So she was comfortable having you come in and sit down for a slice of gingerbread?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
It's really like the books, right?
Yeah.
Her home. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable. Your job itself, it's been your livelihood for 31 years. You have this sort of mix of the social and, as you call it, a muffler job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cleaning fireplace in your house, Wendy, would be like doing a muffler job in the middle of your living room. So how do you contain that? You know, the containment of soot, dust, ash is as much a part of the job as actually cleaning. So whether it's putting plastic up or drop cloths or, you know, high efficiency vacuums and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you find many women coming to chimney sweeping?
No, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Very, very few. I mean, typically a small chimney sweep business would be husband and wife, and the wife does the books. Now, why don't we flip-flop that? I'll do the books.
Yeah.
And my wife did work for me when we first started out.
Did she?
And we found it was difficult because you couldn't separate the personal from the work. I mean, you know, Claudia was just fabulous at it. I mean, my vacuums were wiped down at the end of every day.
Wow.
The details were just wonderful, but it became challenging just because professional and personal life, you couldn't separate the two.
Yeah, it's good to have separation of church and state, right?
Yes.
You know, my first experience with a chimney sweep was with a woman. It was a friend of mine.
Really?
This is back when I was in my 20s, and she came out and cleaned my mother's chimney. And she had she loved it. She loved doing it, and she would lay out a quilt. You know, an old funky quilt. You know, that would be her first step, and my mother thought it was wonderful. You know, so I don't think she's still doing it, but this was also the 70s, so it was kind of a breakthrough job, you know, for a woman to be doing that. Yeah.
And the wonderful point is that women can do it. There's really no barrier whatsoever to a woman being a chimney sweep. I know several around the country, but you know, as many, less than I can count on two hands. But there seems to be absolutely no barrier, which I think is lovely.
You talked a little bit about the trades, you know, chimney sweeping being a trade, as well as many other things that everybody needs, but we are finding less and less of as we go along, or fewer and fewer people to take those jobs. And blue-collar gold, right?
Blue-collar gold is a paperback that was written by a friend of mine down in Nashville, Tennessee area, about what a gold mine the trades are right now. I mean, if you're going to do a trade now, you have to be technically proficient to a certain degree, and you certainly have to be able to manage a business or have some component of your business that's managed in that way. But in terms of the length of time that it takes to train to be, say, for instance, a chimney sweep is just ideal because the training time is very short. It doesn't, I mean, you can get certified by the National Chimney Sweep Guild, you know, in a weekend or in a day in a test. Does that mean at the end of the process that you're qualified to, you know, climb up on a slate roof or to go into a house with a shag carpet and make sure that there's no mess? I don't know. But if you're diligent and you really want to learn the trade, you can learn it in a very short amount of time. But, you know, the more conventional trades like, you know, plumbers, electricians, those two just have such a high bang for the buck because you go to a technical school, at the very most, you know, a 2-year degree, you come out and you're ready to go. And you're in demand and you're making money. And if the activity day to day is something that keeps you fulfilled, it's magic.
Yes, it's all of those things that we need, and we need to know who to call.
Exactly.
And so then there's the network of calling our friends and saying, do you know a good plumber? And I see it on Facebook all the time. You know, does anybody know of a good electrician out there?
People keep telling me I need to have a Facebook page, I need to manage it, and I keep saying, why? I've got more business than I can keep up with.
Yes, well, that's another thing to talk about. You are booked up all the time?
First quarter, it's starting to slow down a little bit now. But I'm really booked up now, and then I don't have any help. My son, younger son Luke, was working for me for 1.5 years. Well, no, almost 2 years. And I was hoping he'd take over the business, and he concluded it wasn't what he wanted to do, which was a wise decision to make earlier on in the game. He was fabulous at it. We got along really well. It was just, I would never have traded that experience of working with him, and I don't think he would either. But finding somebody that has the skill set, the technical skill set really isn't that tough. Some building skills, you know, working safely on a ladder, but the interpersonal part is the really important thing. Because you want people to call you back, and you want them to be comfortable with you, and every house is different. What you might require in your house, Wendy, might be very different than the next house I go to. I like to say I've, you know, worked on everything from tar paper shacks to Michael Eisner's second house. I mean, it just ranges.
Yeah.
But everybody needs to be shown respect.
That's right. Yeah, and that must be a wonderful thing to carry with you each day when you go into someone's
It's a fun
home.
challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
And it has to be real, because
Right.
I like to say people can sort of sense, they can smell if you're not being sincere with them.
Yes,
you
yes.
know.
And again, that's sort of where apprenticeship comes in as well, by learning by example.
And there's some very good technicians out there who are wonderful people, but they don't necessarily convey that.
Yeah.
You know, the kind of the gruff worker person, a few words. And if you're in a very remote location, for instance, I usually do this when I'm training people. You're at a remote location, you're coming to a house where there's a single woman there. How do you make her feel comfortable in 30 seconds? How do you make her realize that you're the safest person in the world and that you're going to do a good job exactly the way she wants it done? I mean, I hate to be gender specific, but you know, it could be a single male, either way. Yeah. But how do you make the person comfortable? And I mean, what I do is I always talk about my family. I talk about my wife. I talk about my community, so that they have some sense of who I am.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Have you ever seen a Chimneyswift?
Yes.
You have.
In fact, they're a protected species. So if you find them active in a chimney, you cannot remove them or harm them.
Really? You can't remove their nests or anything?
No. So what you need to do is wait later in the season when they fledge their young, which I think is usually in August.
Yeah.
Then they're done, you're good to go. We don't see too many anymore because the inside of modern chimneys are so smooth that they don't have a way to anchor the nest. They have a semicircular nest that they anchor with something.
Saliva, I think, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I just saw a nest a couple of weeks ago. Not active, but I was surprised to see it in a modern chimney. Old, unlined chimneys that are rough brick were perfect for them to make their nest.
Yes, I was reading up on them, you know, and it was something that I had heard about them, but didn't realize that it's almost like they're a combination of bats as well, because they have claws that can really dig into surfaces like that, and they're comfortable in like wells and some abandoned houses and chimneys, but they also migrate to Peru.
Really?
Yes. You didn't know that?
I did not know that.
I'm very impressed.
No, I did not know that.
Yes, they migrate every year, and they come back. You know, I don't know if the same ones come back. I didn't get that far, but they just sounded like a really interesting animal. Yeah. Or bird.
I have friends that have gotten interested, and I think there are towers that you can build that attract chimney swifts.
Yeah. That could be.
So there were some chimney sweeps building those in their yards too, because they just got interested in them.
Yeah. But a chimney sweep does not want them in the chimneys because they can't do their job. No. Yeah. One last question about chimney sweeps. What about protection? About respiratory protection.
Well, I always like to say that all chimney sweeps should wear respiratory protection, and respiratory protection does not function well with facial hair. Do not have facial hair and wear respiratory. Okay. I've always had a beard. I shave it off sometimes because I know that I should, and it always comes back somehow.
I don't know how that happens.
It just happens. But I wear a very good Swedish respirator. In fact, I liked them so well, I actually contacted the company, and they did a workshop for us at our summer gathering, which is called Sweep Fest.
That's great.
In Newmarket, New Hampshire, and they were very nice, did a nice presentation.
That's great. That's great. So it's something that you've learned to accommodate yourself to.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing to get used to. For me, well, I didn't have to get used to, going 40 feet up in a ladder, but having this thing on your face all the time.
It's very obtrusive, yeah.
It's not nice to have this big thing on your face.
Yes. In your off time, you rock climb. Rock climbing is something that you've done, which is not a really big surprise here.
I do not anymore.
Yeah.
I did that.
But you liked it when you did.
I did like it a lot.
Yeah. And were you rock climbing when it was a really big deal, like it's become, or was it before those days?
It was before those days.
Yeah.
I went when I was going to school out in Olympia. We did climbing in a little bit in Yosemite and some in the Cascades, and but I realized I wanted to figure out a way to climb and get paid for it. But that said, I don't do much anymore. Yeah. We clean chimneys from the inside primarily.
Yeah. Also, one of the things that you do is you're part of Rock Voices.
Yes,
And I hear that at the Rock Voices this year, you have a solo?
I do.
You do. And
Yes, I
what
do.
song do you have a solo in?
It's a song called Let's Make a Better World,
Nice.
which was popularized by Dr. John.
Uh-huh. That's very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I bet.
For a-
So can you talk a little bit about singing? And
Yes. You know, I work by myself a lot, and for years I've whistled, and I always wanted to sing. And how did I get onto Rock Voices? Claudia insisted I go to a concert, and that was it. As soon as I saw it, that was for me.
Yeah.
And I unconsciously would sing in the truck driving around. Now I consciously sing, and I play our little part CDs while I'm driving around.
That's really fun. Yes. We have had actually a few guests on the show who are part of Rock Voices. Philip Hamilton and Tim
Yes.
Allen. Yes, I think there's some others.
Yeah, Tim Allen had a nice solo, a very nice James Taylor song.
That's so great. Yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, the energy of that group is really fun. And you are also a Quaker, which started way back when you went to Quaker school, I believe.
Well, I guess that was maybe a catalyst,
Yeah.
but it sort of gelled for a decade or so. Yeah, I've been a member of Putney Friends Meeting for 25 years or more.
Wow. And that was before the meeting house was built. So where did you meet?
We met at the elementary school.
Oh, wow. On Sundays?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And now I have a wonderful addition to the original building, so
Yes.
we're really well
It's a beautiful building.
set up. And we just went solar just last week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're 100%
On the roof?
photovoltaic. Yep.
Uh-huh. That's great. That's great. And so being a Quaker in the area, you do have a community, and it's probably a
Oh,
pretty
yeah.
solid community.
Sure is.
Yeah.
I've been involved. I never really did committee work, and Quakers rely on committees. Committees are everything. You don't have clergy really at the head of things, so it's all committees. And the last few years, I've gotten involved in some of the committees, and I've found all the inner workings that happen in a friends meeting, to watch out for people and support people, and just basically not only care for the whole meeting, but to watch after individuals. It's very interesting. I'm still learning about it.
Well, it kind of goes along a little bit with what you're doing as a chimney sweep, in going into someone's home and being aware of the person and creating a comfort level. And
It's true, but the Quakers don't pay me.
unless, well, they have a chimney there, I believe, don't they? have
They
a
do,
wood
in
stove?
fact.
Yeah.
Well, they used to have a wood stove. I swapped it out for a gas stove.
Ah, well.
I affectionately refer to it as our gas wood stove. The only problem with the gas stove is when it comes on, it's fine.
Yeah.
But when it turns off, it goes pop. And when you're sitting in silent meeting, and all of a sudden you have this pop, we've gotten used to it. But
Yeah. You've been talking lately a bit about retirement, or at least looking toward that.
moving on from chimney sweeping, yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about?
I got trained to be a hypnotherapist a year ago.
Really?
Yeah, slightly different.
Yes, very slightly different.
Once again, I mean, it's sort of like chimney sweeping. All the good things that have happened in my life, I can't tell you why. So I started reading about this, and I was laid up 5 years ago, and I had a summer of chemotherapy, and couldn't do a whole lot, and I just kept reading all these books. I actually had an experience with a stage hypnotist at a chimney sweep convention.
Really?
Which was not altogether positive, but it intrigued me.
It did.
So that was sort of the catalyst.
And what interested you about it?
Well, I was just amazed the stage hypnotist could seemingly get people to do things not of their own accord. And I find that's not really true. You can't get somebody to do something they don't want to do. But it was fascinating. And stage hypnotism is very different than clinical hypnotism. But once again, I found out that the National Guild of Hypnotists is in Merrimack, New Hampshire. They have their convention in Marlborough, Mass, which allowed me to get down there, because if it was in Timbuktu, I just couldn't have afforded it. But once again, that's another community of like-minded people, very interesting. And I found the convention, even though very different subject matter, to be so much like going to a chimney sweep convention, because it's sort of an odd thing that not a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And you get together a lot of people that do the same thing, and they just have a blast
Yeah.
talking about what they do.
That's right. Communication, connection,
Yeah.
like minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lovely thing. Yeah. With this idea of no longer chimney sweeping, you are thinking about getting someone to take your place. You would like
I've
to.
been searching high and low.
Yeah.
I mean, the hope was that my son would want to do it. It turned out he didn't. Wise decision on his part, I think, just because he's going different directions. And I don't know, I've had a few people, but for different reasons, they just haven't worked out.
Yeah.
Like the last person was the toughest because he was perfect.
Oh.
He was really, I thought, the right person, but for his own reasons, he concluded it wasn't what he wanted to do. So
A little bit of the disappointment.
yeah, and he's such a nice person. I mean, I wish him well. He's the sort of person that you can't not wish this guy well.
Yeah, right, right. And so you are, so you would welcome an apprentice?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
You put the word out. We'll
Yes.
put the word out on the show.
On the show, to the
Yeah.
universe, wherever.
Whoever's out there, yeah, to attract it. And you're continuing to bike?
Yes.
Yes, and that's another retirement plan?
Yes, as a matter of fact, an old high school friend of mine and I are hoping to bike across the country in 2021.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And these are bicycles. These have no motors on them.
That's right.
That's right.
Human power.
Yeah, from where to where?
We're going to go from west to east and somewhere near Portland and then ending up in Maine.
Oh.
I have two friends that are doing that same route, and they're starting in Anacortes, Washington, San Juan Islands, and they're riding to Cadillac Mountain, Maine, this summer.
Yes.
So we'll let them work out all the bugs.
That's a great idea. Yeah, see how that goes.
Yeah.
See how their trip goes. That's something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Yes. And any other last story you have for us? Chimney or other?
Chimney or otherwise? Well, if I could cycle the way the German chimney sweeps do, like in Frankfurt and Hamburg, they ride to their job.
With all their equipment.
And there oftentimes the homeowner has to provide access to the roof. But they're cycling along with these old black bicycles with all their equipment. So that would be my ideal. So my ideal is to have a career post chimney sweeping that I can ride my bike to, no car.
You just want to ride your bike. You don't necessarily want a chimney sweep.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, as I say, I would like to move on while I still really love it.
Yes.
And when I talk to Steve, usually the first thing he says is, "Boy, I missed that.
Oh,
It was
really?
so much fun."
And he's been out of the business for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he
Yeah.
misses it.
He misses it.
That's saying a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it mostly the people, do you think, and going out, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely the people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like the problem solving. You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah.
There was the soapstone wood stove with a 4-inch top yesterday that had to be removed before you could take the connector pipe off yesterday. I was like, how do you get that off? How do you get it in the ground? How do you get it back on?
Yeah.
And still walk afterwards?
Well, yeah, if you're working alone, those kinds of things would be pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you're troubleshooting a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And wishing somebody was with you at certain times. That apprentice who hasn't shown up yet.
That hefty young person.
Right. That's great. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you,
This has
Wendy.
been
This
fun.
is a real honor. Thank you
it's
very much.
great having you on, and I just love having people on who we all know, as I said, we all know that our chimneys need cleaning, but we don't know who does them. So it's the Chimney Doctor, and we'll have the information at the end of the show.
Grand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks to all of you for being with us once again, and we will see you next week.